now time for Rex Brandstatter Senior Talk, brought to you by Windmill Manor and the Solon American Legion.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, this is Rex Brandstatter. Wow, what a wonderful day. We couldn't mail order online, anything like that, a nicer day than this. Forget your old rear end outside and enjoy it. It's noon here in Iowa City, and that means we've got about 5 hours of this sunshine left today before it hides down over the western bank. So that's what's going to happen. I'm so glad you've taken a little time out of your busy day to meet with me here and to sit back and listen to Senior Talk, the weekly radio program where I try to dig up, find, think about, listen to phone calls, share ideas that might be important to you and we fellow seniors. And I just really want to thank you for tuning in. So sit back, relax, make yourself a sandwich, and get an ice cold root beer, and let's see what we can cook up. And as always, I'll do my very best every week to bring you information of fun recollections of past people, places, things, and events, and of course the latest and greatest things on senior item for sure. My name is Rex Brandstatter. I'm 74 years old, and I think that we seniors have a lot on our minds, and we're going to talk about some of those things today. Well, I've been a licensed Iowa real estate broker in the state of Iowa, working mostly in Iowa City, Coralville, Johnson County area since 1974, helping lots and lots of people buy and sell houses, investment properties, commercial properties. And I can certainly help you. I do at this point. I work with a lot of estates. I work with a lot of administrators of those who passed away without an executor. I work with the executors if you had a will. I work with the trust departments of banks. Attorneys call me. CPAs call me. There's special things we can talk about at U.S. Seniors. Let's talk about housing. And maybe it's between you, or maybe it's you and your family would like to sit down and talk. Please call me on my senior line, which is 319-330-5534. 330-5534. Never any charge for anything like that. Just sit down and talk and see what's a cooking. You might have some issues that maybe it's time to move. Maybe you've always thought about moving across town or to Florida, whatever the case may be, and what is your home worth. That's the kind of things we can talk about. Also could be a thing about maybe some legal questions. I'm not the attorney, but if you gave me some questions that I deem to be legal, I can put you in touch with the right legal people who could answer your questions. That do that all the time. Case in point. This morning, I got a call from a gentleman, and he said, and I know him, he said, I'm just sitting here thinking, do I need a will? And I said, well, let me ask you some questions. I said, do you own anything? Do you own like a car? Do you have any money in the bank? Do you have any real estate? And he goes, well, yes. I said, you said yes to all those? He said, yeah. I said, do you have kids? Yes, I do. They're adults. They're grown and gone. I said, are you married? No. I said, okay. I said, yes, you need a will. And that wouldn't depend on whether you're married or not. So I said, how old are you, sir? He said, 75. So I just shook my head. So here's a call this morning from a gentleman who wants to know if he should have a will. Folks, the answer is yes, and certainly don't take my word for it, but that's an easy litmus test. If you have anything, you should have a will. When I mean have anything, the things I just talked about. You have possessions, you have a property, you have a car, you have a bank account, things like that. That's the story. He said, well, maybe I can go online. And he says, I used to watch this television show by Susie Orman. Now, I watch those things, too, just to gather some hints. I haven't seen her for 2-3 years. I don't know if she's still around. She's a lady who is a financial guru type of thing. And she would tell this man, get off the phone and go get a will. I guarantee that's for sure. So that's just when you think maybe people are really listening to it. Here's a guy that you know who's 75 years old and he wants to know if he should have a will. The answer is yes, absolutely. So you're sitting out there asking the same thing, kind of looking across the table at your wife or your husband. Well, maybe we should get a will. We don't really know what to do. Well, what you need to do is this: you can go online, you can order a will kit, make sure it's germane to Iowa. Every state has their own rules. And in Iowa, you can actually write it on the back of an envelope. Don't want you to do that, but have to have 2 witnesses. So you did that. That's your will. But it's much easier, much cleaner, much more legal, much more enforcement, much more binding if you go call an attorney and sit down with he or she attorney and work this out. And they don't want to charge you any more than they have to. Whatever that fee is, I don't know, but ask them up front. Just don't play coy with them. Just ask them up front. Can you make me a will for $500 or $1,000 or whatever. We'll see what they charge and see what you find out. You'll be surprised at how little it really is. That is, in my opinion, and it really, for how little it really is and how much and how important it really is to you. Well, you know, so many activities going on around this town. When I say around this town, I mean around the area for sure. I hope you're part of something, whether it may be part of being a senior is you really should consider remaining active in something, whether it's watching your grandkids or working in the yard or out in your little shop or knitting or crocheting or whatever it is you do. Church activities, other things. It's kind of when you retire and or a senior and or both. It's kind of what keeps the brain going, keeps your thought process going, which is good for us, rather than vegging out on the couch and watching soaps every day. That's not good for us. I know some people can't get around, so maybe that's what they can do. I don't know that, but I hope you can get out and take advantage of some of these things. And gosh sakes, for today is going to be really nice. It's going to be really nice until Thursday or Friday. The Saturday is the next big litmus test for me, and that'll be Saturday afternoon at Kinnick Stadium at 2:30, and they're talking 53 degrees. Well, where we sit on the east side, when the sun goes over the top of the big tall press box, man, it goes down immediately. So you got to have a jacket on for sure. So we're looking for big warm things. We're looking for a hot day at Kinnick this week, and I mean coming off the Iowa team, that is for sure. You know, you can go watch Heartlanders hockey or the Iowa men's and women's baseball team and wrestling team, basketball. Of course, there's no baseball. Iowa volleyball. We've got a lot going on in this town, and it really is. Let me tell you something I did yesterday. Out on First Avenue in Corville, up from Perkins North, above the interstate there, they're working on that bridge and the interchange, the whole interchange. It's a huge, ongoing type of thing. They're going to make a new interchange up there, which they're doing. Well, yesterday or last evening, matter of fact, they opened up the new bridge. Now, all traffic, both north and south, is over to the new bridge. That thing is really nice. It's it's 4 or 5 or 6 feet above the old bridge. You really get kind of a commanding view, not that you need to be looking up and down the interstate, but it's pretty cool. The other thing I did was I got out of my car and I walked up that neck of the woods, and I started from the parking lot there right in front of Perkins, right across the street in the Trader Joe's parking lot on the sidewalk, and I walked north. I walked underneath the new tunnels. I walked over the new bridge, the new pedestrian bridge, bicycle bridge, walking bridge over the interstate, and it's really nice. And then I turned around and came back the same way underneath the bridges. There's one tunnel that's not open yet, and that's the tunnel way up on the north end. That tunnel is not open yet, but it'll be open as soon as they open up that part of the intersection. So I did everything I could to walk it. It's not an easy walk, if you will. So if you start down there in the southwest corner of Trader Joe's parking lot, right there on First Avenue, right across from the Hayden Fry statue, and walk north, it's a pretty good little jaunt, and it's uphill. Now, not like in school when it was uphill both ways. It's only uphill when you're going north. So when you get up to the top end over there and you stand there and look out over the interstate and walk through the tunnels, it's downhill. It's all downhill from there, as they used to say. Well, that's the story. That was just an activity that I decided I wanted to do because it's going to be getting cold and crappy out, and I wanted to do it when it was a nice day. So I can tell people, yes, I've walked that, or yes, that's pretty neat. Those guys building that place over there, that interchange, are really doing a wonderful job, and they are ahead of schedule. Wow, who could say that? So you might want to try that if you want to give yourself a little exercise. Just remind yourself it's a little bit uphill going to the north. Well, I've had some pretty good, nice calls from seniors this week, and here's what they seem to be saying. It said, our school board election included a bond issue that did not pass. Now they say they'll try again in the next 6 months. That's what a lady from the north part of Johnson County asked me. I said, well, interesting. I don't know how you voted, whether you voted for or against. I didn't ask, and I don't care. So I didn't remember in bond issue, you have to have 60%. If you're asking the public to approve it, you have to have 60%, which prevents the packing of the ballot box and cheating like people have done over the years, of course. That's why they have that rule. But they should do this. You used to be able to go back in 6 months. We lost, we're going to go back in 6 months. Or we won, the other side said, we're going to see if we can't get that reversed. Well, the state of Iowa passed a law last year that says a bond issue, you can only do it on the regular voting day. So if your school board is going to, by golly, we're going to give that a whirl one more time. Instead of asking for $50 million, we're going to ask for $35 million and not build the gymnasium, something like that. They cannot come back to you until next year, the voting day of next November, which will actually be a general election, a presidential election year. So there'll be a lot on the ballot next year. So rest assured, ma'am, that they cannot come back in 6 months or 8 months and spring that on you. When that's the old trick used to be, well, we'll wait till everybody's gone. We need this school thing. We'll wait till school's out. A lot of people are on vacation. We'll round up our side of the bill, and we'll have a vote. And that's what has happened over the years. We all know that. Kind of a big King's X, crush your fingers behind your back that you didn't do it. Well, they can't do it anymore. They've got this all straightened out, which is a very, very good thing. Well, a senior man asks, and says, I have lost 2 of my fellow senior brothers in the past years, his real brothers. Pretty tough stuff as we grew up real close, and we grew up known each other for a long, long time. One of them had no will or anything like that. He sure made it hard on the rest of us to deal with everything. Well, just like that earlier guy with 75 didn't know if he needed a deal. Then his wife died with no will. And they said, what a legal mess. Well, that's what you do when you don't do things up front. It's so simple to do that. Not even everybody's afraid. Well, the lawyers are charging me $1 million. Not true. I'm here to tell you, not true. I've worked with a lot of people. I've helped a lot of people go to an attorney, and they're pleasantly surprised at how much time it did not take and how much of their money it did not take. Yes, there's a fee for their time, but they're going to save you. Put things in what I call a legal, orderly fashion, folks. And if you don't do that, you know something? If you own some real estate or have some holdings, or you have some minor children, if you're listening, you're not a senior. If you don't have a will, just because you have a sister doesn't mean your kids are going to go get to live with your sister. The court will decide where your kids go. Let's say that you're a grandparent. Right now you're a senior grandparent, and you're in charge with your less than a minor, they're not 21 kids or 18 in Iowa, and something happens to you, that's not to say your grandkids are still going to get to live with grandma. That's not true. The court system will decide where the kids get to go. So even as seniors, you need to decide these things and get yourself what I call a legal posture. A legal posture, and that will include while you're there. There are other things you can do while you're talking to that attorney. Yes, you can have a will, last testament and a will on where you want to your things and your thoughts to go and where your properties to go, your holdings and belongings to go when you're gone. But while you're there, you could also fill out a financial power of attorney, durable power of attorney. In case something happens to you. You can do all kinds of medical power of attorney. So you have a stroke and you don't, honestly, folks, you don't know if you're coming or going anymore, but you're still alive. But who can make decisions for you? Well, you can't. You can appoint your wife. You can appoint your husband. You can appoint your son. You can appoint your daughter. You can appoint your friend. Please do that. You need to get yourself a legal posture. Please get on it. If you're looking for an attorney, I'll give you some names. If you call me, I don't steer you anywhere. If you give me a call, I'll give you some names you can call. And you can tell them what you're thinking about and ask them what they would charge you and things like that. Get started for sure. All right. A senior lady says this. It seems to me at my age, she says that I'm 78, that I should she says, I think about my health every day. I never used to be like that when I was in my 30s and 40s and 50s. It sure is a mind-consuming process. I now read that the ingredient list, I now even go so far as to read the ingredient lists on cans and packaging. I'm trying to really reduce my salt and sugar intake in my diet and let my doctor know that I'm doing this. Wow. This lady kind of hit me with a whole bunch of things. She says she thinks more about her health, so she goes to the store now and she picks up a can of, I'm going to say, just pick up a can of diced tomatoes, anything. Green beans. Turn that label around and you'll see how much the salt, the sodium content is, the sugar content, protein in there, all kinds of things. You can do that yourself. Everybody who has a marketing food product, they have to have that on there. And so if you have two different companies or two different kinds of say green beans. There's cut green beans and then there's cut green beans with no sodium or low sodium. Turn that can around and see the salt content. Well, those are things you should be on the lookout for. as we're seniors, we're trying to reduce our blood pressure. That's what kind of, in the end, in the honesty, is the blood pressure is not good. Elevated blood pressure is kind of what really attacks our heart and our veins and our arteries and things like that. So just simple things like that. I've been doing that for quite a while, and I'm shocked at how much. If you pick up a can of refried beans, look at the salt content. Look at the salt content in soup. All those things you don't really realize. Well, I like soup. Well, good. I have had it. You might want to read the salt content. All right. Well, anyhow, she's all excited about what she's finally realized that she can do, what comes up on her mind when she's doing that. So good for her. And she says, I've learned so much about products at the store just by doing this. Well, you can pick up a package of pasta, a package of potato chip. God, don't do that and look at it. You'll never need another potato chip. But it's for your information. It's for the consumer information. Next time you're at the store, I want you to pick up a can of this, that, whatever you normally buy. I don't believe it's on meat. It's canned goods and packaged goods and things like that. Cottage cheese, turn it around. Take a look at that for sure. Have at it. See, just start to learn some of these things. Well, a lady called me and says, well, Rex, she said, we went to the Johnson County Administration Building on Monday. Well, what a mess, she said. Where did all the offices go? Well, folks, what's going on is the administration building, that's down on 900 South Dubuque Street, lies between Clinton and Dubuque Street. Was that Happy Hollow? Was that Happy Hollow playground down there back in the day? It's where the Army used to be, the United States Army and National Guard Army used to be. That's the administration building where you get your pay your taxes and get your license plates and things like that. The recorders down there, the assessor, Iowa City assessor, the Johnson County assessor, the recorder. Planning and zoning, the supervisor's officer, that's the building that she's talking about. Folks, there's nobody in that building anymore. They all moved out. What? What are you talking about, Rex? Well, supervisors passed a big thing. They're doing millions and millions and millions of dollars of recabulation inside that building. From wiring to plumbing to walls, lighting, all those things. So where did everybody go? Well, they moved across the street to the north in the Health and Human Services building. Now, I have to tell you, I haven't been over there yet. I'm kind of staying away unless I have to go because I'm sure there's organized, quote, as they can be. I'm sure that all those offices are, and we need each and every one of them every day of the week. I'm sure they are as organized as they can be. And they get to move back, I'm thinking, this fall. So let's just say they're supposed to be able to move back in October. Let's push that back and say probably before Christmas. How's that sound? Because in today's world, they won't be able to get these parts. They won't be able to get that wiring set up. They won't be able to get this computer trays or computer cabling, whatever it takes. I don't know what all it takes. They won't be able to get the wall systems. They won't be able to get the guys to come and do the sheetrock. Maybe there's a strike in the meantime and the plumbers go out, or, I don't know all those things, but those are things that happen. So if they say October, middle of October, I think you can pretty much guarantee another month at a minimum. So they're going to be disrupted over there. If they're disrupted during tax season, which they will be because tax season ends on September 30th, that's going to be a real mess. It's already kind of a mess, we'll say, but go down there. If you need to go there, go do it. You can park where you always parked and walk across the street, or you can go to HHS building, which is right to the north on the former site of a Hawkeye or a lumberyard. Do you remember that? That's where they're at, on part of that site. There used to be houses there years ago. That's where they're at. You go in the north side of the building. There's a big parking lot, runs east and west. You can go in there. I don't know what to tell you what door to go in, but go in and fish around. They'll have all kinds of stuff like that. So if you want to record something, if you want to check on your assessment, you want to pay your taxes, you want to get another driver's license, you don't go there. Driver's license, you go out to Coral on Highway 6 West. You go out to Tyson's and take a right where you have Tyson's. You turn to the right, and it's right there on the right-hand side. So we've got all kinds of things you could do to keep up with the Joneses here and where all these places are. So she said, where did everybody go? There you go. They went right across the street to the north. A senior man advises this. We left for our house in Florida a month ago. And he said, then I had a recurring health issue. And my doctor down there says, I really think you should go back home and talk to your doctor up in Iowa. He said, well, I just got here. And doctor said, well, I just think there's some circumstances. So in other words, that doctor says, Bob, that's not his real name, you need to go see your main doc because there's some things going on that only he is going to know. So he said, here I am. I'm back. So my doctor hasn't really said everything, but he said to me when I got back, he said, I'll see you next week. So there's something going on. So anyhow, I don't know what it is, but he says, I'm 78, going to be 79. So I says, Rex, he says, I assume that's part of being a senior. Well, most likely that's the issue. You know, we all kind of start to wear out, but we do the best we can to keep healthy, stay healthy, be active, eat the right things, think the right thoughts, stuff like that. But the old body, sometimes they just kind of start going downhill, and that's what's going on with this gentleman. He knows it, nothing he can do, but so he just got down there, and then he told him he needed to come back and see his doc. So he's been home for a few days, and now he's getting ready to go back to Florida. So they must have worked on him or got him set up with this or that or straightened him out or, you know, things like that. So these things happen, folks. These things absolutely happen. Speaking of things happening, how about my good friend? His son-in-law says, I bought an old car up in Minnesota. Would you go with me to bring that car back? So the handy-dandy father-in-law says, sure. He's retired. So they drove up to Minnesota. One was going to drive the old car. The son-in-law would drive the old car. And the senior father-in-law said, sure, I'll drive right behind you. Well, they got from where they bought it in southern Minnesota, they got about 60, 70 miles, and the car pooped out, overheated. They're in Iowa, up by Mesa City, and the car overheated. And much as they tried, they took it to a garage, had towed to a garage. They went there, went on an express, had it towed to a garage. And the guy says, well, I really don't work on these things. I think maybe it's the heating, maybe it's the pressure cap, the standard radiator things. Well, they decided that they couldn't go get it like that. So they drove home. They got the good car and drove home, and then they called me to get some recommendations for somebody to work on the old car. So I gave them a couple names. So now they went back up and got it home. They babied it. They could drive about 40 miles an hour from northern Iowa down to Iowa City. They got it, babied it without to stop once in a while. Let that be a lesson. I'm an old car guy. I really question, and that was they left on Sunday. I really question being out on a Sunday, on a weekend with an old car. If you're doing that, I've bought a few old cars, and I always have them transported back to Iowa City. To my shop, and I don't want to get halfway home. That's my biggest fear, and that's part of being an old car business. You're going to get halfway to something, or halfway back. That's part of the deal. We all know that. Old car guys, you all know that. Done that several times. Well, they were asking for trouble, in my opinion. It's an old car. So more power to them. They got it back, and now they're going to get it fixed. And the guys I gave them names, they'll know how to fix it for sure. Isn't that the truth? Say, I need to ask you a question. How are you doing with all the streaming and Peacock and watching Iowa games? How's that going for you? Well, it's not going worth the hoot at the Brandstatter house because we might have a smart TV, but I'm not smart enough to figure it out. So my brother's grandson's going to come down and show me how to do it after Thanksgiving. How's that sound? I'm not willing to tackle that, which means I won't be watching Iowa games, so that's their problem, which means because I can live without it. I might listen to it, but I'm not talking football. I'll do my best to go somewhere to do that. But basketball and the other sports, which means that their advertisers are missing out. I'm not watching. I won't be watching to listen to the ad. Well, maybe I'll go get some of that at the grocery store now that they're advertising it. Okay? I won't be watching. Speaking of advertising, how tired are you getting of the people selling at every commercial break on any cable TV channel trying to sell you Medicare insurance? Well, what they're trying to do is if you're on Medicare, you're set. You don't have to change your Medicare. Shut up. Leave it alone, as they would say. What they're really trying to say is the 20% gap. Medicare is only good for 80% of our needs. Okay, it's really good for hospital stuff, but doctor things and other things like that, it's not the hottest thing going. It leaves about a 20% hole in our chink in our armor. So these guys on TV make it so they got these phony actors and all that stuff like that, and asking dumb questions to make us look like we're dumb too. They're just trying to say that 20% insurance. So I'm saying rather than call the ones on TV, just hit the mute button after about 37 of them in a row, and just call your insurance lady, your insurance man right here in town, and talk to them. Do you sell gap insurance for Medicare? If they don't, they'll tell you who to call, but they'll be right here in town. Somebody you can deal with. Don't. Yeah, I can't tell you what to do. I'm not trying to do that. I would question calling these guys on TV. Because if you read that small print, go over to your TV set when they come on. read the small print. It says you will be contacted by a local licensed insurance. It doesn't even say local, I think, but it says by a licensed insurance. So they're going to turn it over to the Acme Insurance Company in Cincinnati to call you. Whereas you could turn that same thing over to Joe Schmo right down here on Benton Street, pick something out. That's the options you have. Now, lots of people call those numbers. That's why they're on TV. They can go till December the 7th. So they're going to be out there a ways yet. They got a ways to go, but here we are. Folks, today, right at the middle of November. The middle of November. A friend of mine always says, he says, Christmas never got here this fast when I was a kid. And he said, January never goes this fast, like fast as June and July. January creeps and crawls through. You got to agree with that logic. I really do. So I want to ask you a question here. How are you all doing with your aches and pains? You know, how you doing? Well, fine. Everything's fine. Well, you know, nobody really ever wants to hear about your trick knee or your back or what you got going on. People are just being nice to how you doing. All right. But as seniors, I hear from a lot of seniors, and most of the remarks are like, "Oh, what the hell? I got a bad back. My leg is killing me. I tripped and fell," which is not good, by the way. I've had this bursitis. I've had this going on. The doctor got a doctor appointment. That's not what we need to hear. So keep your chin up and keep going. And, you know, I'm having trouble with my hearing. I'm having trouble with my depth perception. I'm just getting slow. I can't remember a few things. Folks, that's part of being on the senior trail. Much as we try to stay young and dress young and look young and act young, you know, we're down the trail a ways. If you're a senior, which I determined to be 60 and older, we're down the trail a ways. So deal with it. Whatever your issues are, deal with them the best way you know how. That's my salute to you for hanging in there. How's that? Well, I want to bring you up to date on something that happened 98 years ago. Rex, what in the heck is wrong with you? Well, just to show you how sharp I really am. Huh? Did I say that? My wife would not agree. On Saturday, November the 7th, so like last week almost, I think that was the 8th maybe, 1923. On a Saturday on early November of 1923, so 98 years ago, in 1925, on Saturday in 1920, excuse me, on Saturday, November 7th, 1925, 98 years ago. There was a football game played at Iowa, and it was played on what's called Old Iowa Field. Now, Old Iowa Field, before it was Kinnick Stadium, was built started in 1928 and built for $400,000, now called Kinnick Stadium. Iowa played football at Iowa Field, and Iowa Field was on the east side of the Iowa River, south of Iowa Avenue. So if you know your campus well, if you had class in the EPB building, English Philosophy Building, which is the building at the east end of the Iowa Avenue Bridge. That's the EP, every Paul boy, English Philosophy Building. EPB is called on campus. I had classes at EPB. Well, at the east end of that bridge, east end, if you're a walker or you want to drive slow someday, right at the very end of that bridge, you'll see about a 12-foot cement column. That was the north end. That was a part of that is still part of the university property, but that was the very north end of the baseball field. Right where the EPB building is, that's where home plate was. The home plate kind of backed up to Iowa Avenue. And they had big covered stands. It was a nice, really nice baseball stadium. And to the south of that, the baseball stadium, between the outfield and the Burling Street Bridge, was Iowa football field. And the stands, the west stands, really, they always say, hung out over the Iowa River, where they sort of did. So that's where this game was played. November 7th, 1923 on Iowa Field. All the stands are there and a home plate backed up. And you can still see that big 12-foot tall cement pylon. Go down there and take a look. On that day, it was below zero, 10 below zero. Snow on the ground of 3 to 5 inches. Huge winds out of the northwest. This is on November the 7th, November the 8th last year, or 1925. The early part of November, an absolute snowstorm blizzard. The vision was 15 to 30 yards on the field. The ground was frozen and blew across the field. The players' fingers froze. The ball was hard as a rock. And at the end of the day, guess what, folks? We played the nasty, pesky, unliked Badgers from Wisconsin. So it was a typical Big Ten game. It's Iowa versus Wisconsin. And in the end, Iowa led on all categories, all statistics except one. And you know which one we did not lead on. Unfortunately, that happened. Iowa led in passing yardage, which wasn't very much because they couldn't hardly pass. I don't know if they had any passing yardage. Running yardage, they led Wisconsin. There were 32 fumbles in that game. Iowa led the game in fumbles. Iowa had 24. The final score was the pesky, frozen, half-frozen to death Badgers, just as cold for them, 6-0 on that day. It's called the Big Ten football game that never should have been played. It never should have been played. The referees froze to death, everybody there. If you see a picture, there's a great, great pictures of the stands. There was a big crowd. Believe this or not, folks, there was a big crowd. Now, they didn't have the latest in down jackets and things like that. Just a big overcoat. And the men wore fedoras, business hats, and the women had some sort of hats on, the 1920s era hats. There's no way that they were warm. So all those people were all crammed into the stadium there, and they're all sitting as close as they possibly could. Some of them had blankets, but everybody's had these big overcoats on. And they were all kind of had their backs leaned towards the northwest to keep that wind off them. It's really, really a classic picture. I'd like to get a hold of that picture and blow it up, and just to show you what those diehard fans were about. Well, one guy here in town said that after that, his wife went to that game, and so did he. Now, Fred Kent was there, the famous Iowa City and University of Iowa photographer. He was there. He had 3 cameras, and they all froze up. So there are very, very few cameras and photos of that game. It was nasty. And it was November the 7th of 1925. Well, last Saturday at the game, it was a little nippy at the game, and I think it got down to, I don't know, 44 or something like that, and everybody was kind of bundling up. This was below zero with the snow. I don't know in today's world how many people would stay. I don't know. I'm probably dumb enough. I probably would have stayed because I dressed for that game Saturday. I had a lot of good clothes on. Yeah, the wind was kind of blowing. It was not warm over there, but the people sitting next to me had a blanket, and 2 rows down there was the guy who had a T-shirt on. So he was younger. Maybe his blood not thin as mine. I suppose. I don't know. So anyhow, we won. We lost the game. It's just another Big Ten game, and but that's where we played back then in 1925. Just a few short years later, 4 years later, we're over at Koenig Stadium. Now, one of the interesting things about Koenig Stadium was what? We took possession of that. The university did in 1921 at the height of what? The height of what was going on in this country? The height of the Depression. The University of Iowa defaulted on the bonds. Oh, what a nasty story that was. Right about the same time, 1930, the University of Iowa was, they were by the Western Conference, by the way. Chicago University was in it, things like that. Iowa was accused of, and they're give them a fair trial, then hang them. They booted us out of the Big Ten, booted us Iowa out of the Western Conference for recruiting violations. What they would have been back then, I don't know. If you look on the Iowa records for a couple of years, we played Cornell, we played Yale. Now, Yale was very good back then. We played South Dakota State, we played Grinnell. Anybody who would play us, we had to have a team. So that's what happened back then. And then we got back in the Big Ten. We paid off the bonds, or we didn't pay them off. We made it right with the bonding company to get to Koenig Stadium, and away we went back into football. All that big turmoil, and I think it was all started by these stupid game in 1925. Well, how about this? So keep that in mind this weekend when it's not all that bad over at Koenig. Just dress warm. The average Social Security check for senior is $1,640 a month. The average medical debt for a senior over 65 medical debt is $13,500. 70% of senior Americans, homeowners, have a mortgage. 70%. Doesn't say it's a big one. It just says have a mortgage. 10,000 American seniors reach age 65 every day. So that would give you an idea of the strain on Medicare, pharmacies, doctors, the medical industry. It creates, with all those people there, look at the industries it's creating. The industries it's creating are some of these people on TV selling us the handlebars so we can sit on a toilet better. Anything, hearing devices, car remotes. Those are basically designed for seniors. Everybody's glommed on them for sure. All kinds of different things. because we're getting over all the industries that are designed for seniors. And I also get this. I just read that the number of pharmacies in the next 10 years is going to decrease by 30%. Why? I don't get that. Well, probably because big medicine is taking in, and if you're going to get those pills, they're going to be the companies, the only place you can go to get this care, maybe the ALZ, things like that. Big studies at the University of Iowa working on Alzheimer's right now going on. Wow. Now, the number of seniors reaching age 65 is going to peak in 2029, by the way. 2029. 50% of Americans collecting Social Security benefits rely only on that money. 50%. So 50% of America, you get 10 seniors in the room, half of them live on Social Security. That's what this says. That would not be good. But remember, if you're not, I guess it'd make a difference if you're a senior or not a senior, you get to take advantage of what you put together for yourself. That's kind of one of my seniorisms. You get to take advantage when you're retired of what you put together for yourself retirement-wise, whether you have a duplex or 8plex or 15 of them, or stocks and bonds and money in the bank, a retirement from your work, Social Security, all those things. You get to enjoy now the benefits that you put together. If you didn't put them together, you're not going to get to enjoy them. I feel bad for you. But you had the same amount of time to do that as anybody else. So, not picking on anybody here, just to make the best you can, for sure, with what you've done with yourself, for sure. So, how about this? In 1973, the hottest movies. The 3 hottest movies in 1973. I was out of college, so I think I went to a couple of these while I was in college. Number 1 was The Sting with Robert Redford and Paul Newman. What a wonderful movie that was. That was great. Right up to the end, I thought The Sting, I'd watch that again today if it was streaming, which I can't do, or if it's on an old movie channel or something. Maybe I've got that. I don't know. I liked The Sting. I liked the music with The Sting. American Graffiti. Old cars, the girls, the cruising around. That is a cult for old car guys. Is American Graffiti, filmed in Modesto, California. And for that week, they filmed like in 2 weeks. It was unseasonably cold, so in some of those outtakes there, they didn't take them very long. They just filmed it and ran for the trailer. And last but not least, the third one was Paper Moon. You remember Paper Moon? It was Depression era setting. And it was a pretty fun movie. So The Sting, American Graffiti, and Paper Moon. And speaking of The Sting, that's what the Illini in Illinois are going to feel from the Hawkeyes this weekend. The Sting. I think I was going to raise up and pop them one. So that's what we need to do. So thank you so much for listening to Senior Talk, all you Hawkeye fans. If you're a Illini fan, maybe next week we'll be your friend, but not this week. So take care of yourselves, folks. Get out there and be active, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. So long.
It's not too late, and certainly not too early, to ask yourself, who's in charge of Thanksgiving dinner? If the answer